any team in the league. Jerry Sneed, Chito Uzie, Roger McCreary. Those guys, very good. If you just look at the starting three for each of these teams, it is not particularly close at all. Welcome into the Hot Read podcast for Friday, June the 21st. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I'm joined on this June Thursday afternoon as we record live by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Runke. JT, are you ready to argue once again about AFC South position groups?
I am, and I'm interested in this one because for me, when I looked at it with all of these different position groups, it really wasn't that hard for me to rank a lot of these groups. So I'm interested to see if we're going to have, I think
we will have disagreements because I was going to say, I don't think it's that cut and dry. I think there's a lot of room for interpretation here.
I think what I mean by that is that I think there's a clear, top dog in all of these, and then after that I think it starts to really get kind of muddled and messy. So I'm with you on that, but as for the top guys in the division, I think that for me was a rather easy choice, because I think when you look at this AFC South division defense wise at the whole, I start to go through the list and I said, man, there was a lot of underachievers last year. As I look at people's stats and who they bring in, it's not as great defensively as I think a lot of people may give it credit. And I know there's a lot of guys who they brought in this year who I think we'll start to see for many of these teams kind of, make their mark on this AFC South and in these divisional battles. But for right now, looking at the guys from last year coming back to these teams, it was a little bit of a disappointing year, I think, for the AFC South as a defense as a whole.
No, I agree. I think it's a little bit overrated across the board. I'm with you. I don't think any of these four defenses are going to be bona fide top three without a shadow of a doubt killer defenses. They're not going to be the Browns. They're not going to be the Jets. Everybody has at least one really significant hole. And I felt there's a couple of them where I think the best group is up for interpretation. There's a couple of them where I think there's a clear worst group and the rest is kind of meh. There's a couple where it's like, okay, this team really sucks in this category. But we've got 5 position groups as we did on Tuesday. And if you missed Tuesday's episode, you should go listen to it. It was a lot of fun. JT and I argued vehemently over the 5 offensive position groups: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and offensive lineman for the AFC South. And today we are doing the defensive linemen, the edge group, linebackers, safeties, and cornerbacks. I think we'll go backwards in order. We'll start at the back of the defense with the safeties and work our way closer and closer to the line of scrimmage. But before we dive into it today, JT, if folks are with us live, we appreciate you being here on a Thursday afternoon, especially on Thursdays are usually a sleepier show for us than a Tuesday, just in terms of view count, because of the way that the work week works and everybody's kind of cramming on Thursday to be done and not have a lot to do on Friday, I'd imagine. And especially in June, the slowest month of the year for us. We appreciate those of you that are diehards that are tuning in with us anyways, part of the conversation today. You can join us and literally be our judge, jury, and executioner as to who is right as we argue these position groups. If you go on over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page, Broadway Sports Media on YouTube, find the live stream there, and you can join the comment section, and we can see them and throw them up on the screen and engage with you guys as we go through these position groups. Now, and while you're there, by the way, hit subscribe, hit like, all of these things that can help us with the algorithm. We appreciate you guys doing that. If you're on Twitter or on Facebook, a like, a retweet, also very helpful for us. JT, sending things in group chats that I'm in the middle of our show, unrelated to the show. Look at you, you multitasker. Did you even hear a word I just said? Probably not.
I did.
Is there something about subscribing?
You were doing the whole preamble, I don't know if I have to. There was a trade that went down. It's Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey, I guess. And me being someone who knows nothing about basketball, just sent it into our chat and said, explain this to me in NFL terms, because I have no idea what's going on. And I was just going to look at it afterwards and see what's going on. But,
Yeah, I mean, Caruso is older. Giddey is younger. I have no thoughts other than that. That's the level of my analysis. I feel like Alex Caruso is probably a little bit better and older, and Giddey is worse and younger. That is the extent of my knowledge on that. But again, if you told me that was wrong, I would believe you. Let's go back to football. Let's start with the safeties. Let's and I think another thing that I think is going to be illuminating about this as we go through defensively in particular, the way that these teams are built. We talk pretty often about how within a division, NFL teams are, you're building specifically to match up with the teams you have to play twice a year, that your division mates, because the number one job is to win the division. That's the best way you can set yourself up for success in the playoffs. Beating AFC teams, very nice. Beating any team, NFC, AFC, like also important. But the number one goal is win your division, and so teams specifically build in order to beat one another. That being said, as you go position group by position group here, I think there's some peculiarities about the way that these teams are built. And especially as we get closer to the line of scrimmage, I think it's interesting the personnel groupings and the emphasis of resources these teams just in this offseason have poured into different groups, kind of telegraphing their intentions this year. There's some incongruity there with, like, I think certain, I don't give it away. I'm teasing it, but we're going to have an interesting conversation when we get to the edge and the defensive line group in particular, I think, because teams are built very differently in the AFC South along those two lines. But let's start with the safety group. And JT, you can start if you'd like. You can share your list. Generally speaking, I think that this is one of those groups where the number one team is pretty obvious, and then it's a lot of blah after that.
Yeah, I think it was one of the harder ones for me to kind of figure out the last three, but there were some certain key details, I think, that kind of solidified my list. But for the safeties in the AFC South, I rank them as follows. Number one, Jacksonville. The Jacksonville Jaguars, probably one of the shining spots of their defense. They don't have that many, spoilers alert.
One of the only, yeah.
Second is Houston. Third, I have Indianapolis. And then fourth, I have the Tennessee Titans.
So I have a similar list. I just flip Tennessee and Indy. But I notated in my notes here that there's a pretty clear divide between Jacksonville and Houston. I think Jacksonville 1, Houston 2, pretty obvious. And we'll get into the certain individual players here in a minute. And then 3, 4, Tennessee, Indy. Like I had Tennessee 3rd, Indy 4th, but like I don't really care because I think they both are inadequate groups. I think they both are lacking. I think they both are weaknesses for their respective teams. And so I have no problem with flip-flopping them. I think they both are no good. We can start at the top here. Jacksonville, the reason why they are the clear one is because of their top 2 starting guys, and Andrew Wingard and Darnell Savage for me. I think Andrew Cisco also as a like those 3 in rotational roles. Cisco, Savage, and Wingard are 3 of the 4 or 5 best safeties in the entire division. I think like of the 5 best safeties in the division, Jacksonville arguably has 2 or 3 of them. Wingard, according to PFF, Wingard was the number 1 graded player amongst the safeties in the AFC South last year, for what that's worth. I know some people take that with a big grain of salt, but not only are those three of the top guys, they're also relatively young, right? You've got 26, 27, and 24-year-old respectively. So that's a pretty young core. It's a strong core. And then when you go to the Texans at number 2, Adrian Amos and Jimmy Ward make up a pretty nice 1-2 punch. Kareem Jackson coming in as their 3rd guy in kind of a rotational role. Excuse me, I forgot Jalen Petrie. Also, they get kind of a 4-pack there. Petrie being the young gun of that group. Actually, how old is? Yeah. So Amos and that's okay. That's what I thought. I was like, these guys are both north of 30. Yeah, Jimmy Ward and Adrian Amos are a veteran tandem, both north of 30 years old, and then Kareem Jackson and Jalen Petrie are 26 and 25 respectively. Then you get to the Titans and the Colts. Before we dump on those 2 teams, JT, any additional thoughts on the Jaguars and the Texans?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the 2 starters or potential starters here, in a new acquired player in Darnell Savage for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who played a little bit for them, and comes from Green Bay, where he had a really nice start to his career, but it kind of went downhill, and he's kind of slowly but surely built it back up. Mm-hmm. And then you're kind of discounting, I think, what Andre Cisco was able to do. I mean, I think he really has a chance to be their top safety this upcoming season. I mean, playing the type of snaps that he's played last year, 571 pass coverage snaps last year, or passing snaps, with 553 of those being on coverage. Like, this is a guy who last season was really able to be pretty consistent in his coverage, allowing a 68.8% receiving percentage last year. So I mean, which is kind of on the higher side, but like that's kind of what happens for all safeties, right? But
well,
I
your
think
situation is important as well. If you're having to
yes.
babysit more often than not, from a secondary standpoint, and we're going to get to this with the Jaguars, it's a good thing they have a great safety group, because their spoiler, the corners suck. I don't know what they're doing at the cornerback position.
Yeah, so I think with them, I think there may be a conversation for Houston to maybe usurp them if they had a down year in that secondary for sure last season with some injuries and dealing with that. But if Jalen Petrie can kind of get back to that kind of Pro Bowl level player that he was being talked about a year and a half ago or so, I
Mhm.
think they have a real shot to kind of usurp the Jacksonville Jaguars as that top safety group. But I'm with you there. I think that these two, considering the guys that they have and the production they put up last year, also mixed in with the depth pieces that they have on that roster, I think kind of clearly have themselves above the level of what an Indianapolis or a Tennessee has.
Well, it's the top line talent in addition to the depth, right? Because the Jaguars go at least 3 deep. Terrell Edmonds, also a Jacksonville Jaguar, who is what he is.
Titans legend.
The Titans, yeah, I about to say, Titans fans know what Terrell Edmonds is. He's a depth guy. But they go 3 deep with Wingard, Savage, and Cisco, and the Texans arguably 4 deep with the veterans Amos and Ward, and then the young guys Jackson and Petrie. The Titans and the Colts don't have guys at that level. Their best players aren't really at the level, I think, of the top guys on Jacksonville and Houston. And they additionally don't have any depth. So we can kind of dive into that. Titans fans know what the situation is with the Titans safeties. We've been talking about it for months. It is a weak point. Now, again, spoiler alert, when we get to the cornerback group, the Titans and the Jaguars are in versus one another, right? The Titans have phenomenal cornerback options and some depth there. And the Jaguars have that situation at their safety position. So if Titans fans are distraught by being 3rd or 4th at the safety position, I would argue, if you gave me the choice, be really awesome at cornerback and bad at safety, or really awesome at safety and bad at cornerback, the clear and obvious answer is to be really awesome at cornerback, because having fantastic safeties allows you to be pretty versatile, both in protection, trying to keep teams from taking the top off of you, and play help in zone and all of these things. Double guys when they're manned up, but also get guys in the box, have play as a tight end eraser, have them blitz from the nickel. Like these are options you have when you have great safeties. But I think you're afforded even more advantageous choices when you have true lockdown cornerbacks, because at the end of the day, especially when it comes to playing man coverage, what the Titans are clearly, again, not to get too far into the cornerback conversation here, but when you are clearly built like the Titans are to play strong man coverage a significant amount of the year, and you can play true, like when a team on any given snap plays lockdown man coverage, there aren't any solutions to that for quarterbacks. Like you can't, if guys are covered up, you are out of options. When you're playing against the zone as a quarterback, there are always holes in the zone. You can always thread the needle in that way. But when you're playing a team where they're just locking your guys down, they can't separate, they can't get open, you're hamstrung. And it's going to allow for, your opponent's defensive pass rush to get after you. You have to hold on to the ball longer. You're going to have to keep your eyes downfield longer, trying to navigate the pocket and multitask in that way. It becomes a headache really, really fast. And that's the kind of thing that a fantastic cornerback room in particular does for you. So, not to be super homerism with the argument here, but if you have to choose one or the other, which the Titans clearly have, okay, we're gonna really hammer out the cornerback position this free agency. We're gonna spend big money on trade for our bona fide stud premier number 1 guy in L'Jarius Sneed. They'll get another really strong starter in Chido Awuzie, and we've got Roger McCreary to round out that trifecta. The safety positions, maybe we'll sign a free agent, in July. That's kind of their plan. It is, I think, the correct choice in my opinion. You there? Hello?
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
There we
I
go.
was gonna say exactly kind of what you said. If there's any position that is a result of playing complementary football on the field, it's the safety position, I think. So like if fans are gonna overreact that we put Tennessee as number 4, it's most of the time a result of reactionary play from the safety, because that's a lot of what a safety's role is, right? So just because we're putting them down there doesn't mean that they don't have a few good key pieces. However, that being said, I think we can talk real quick about the bottom 2 here in Indianapolis and as well Tennessee. I had Tennessee as the 4th out of 4 here, because when you look at both of them, love your depth right now, and also I think it's an interesting conversation to have about, could the Titans vault up into maybe that top 2 conversation if they sign a Justin Simmons here, like in the next couple of
Can
weeks?
I answer that question?
Potentially, like I don't know.
My answer is no. The answer, I think that
depth is still just not there to even be considered.
Yeah, I mean, a large part of it is what you think of Justin Simmons, and I think that he is a start. Like, he would be a nice starting caliber guy. But do I prefer an aging Justin Simmons over Andrew Wingard? Do I prefer an aging Justin Simmons over, Adrian Amos or Jimmy Ward or even a Jalen Petrie? I don't. I think it's splitting hairs a little. It's not clear and obvious, but I think. Yeah, I think if the Titans go and get Simmons, which we kind of expect them to do, that would make them clearly the 3rd best cornerback group, and more importantly, a serviceable cornerback group. Because if you can pair a serviceable cornerback group with enough depth, enough top end talent to just don't F up, like just don't mess this up for us, pair that with a phenomenal cornerback group, then you're cooking. That's what you want.
And I think that gets to the point that, with the safety role, right? The bottom 2 here, Indianapolis and Tennessee, they lack that kind of X factor safety that you'd want. Julian Blackmon has shown that at times, but I think for the most part, that's why I put the Colts 3 and the Titans 4, because when given the choice between a Julian Blackmon as your number 1 and Amani Hooker, I think I'm going to stick with Julian Blackmon, because, I mean, if you look at Amani Hooker's play last year, I know he got absolutely zero help back there, but still the kind of statistics he was putting up last year as the Titans' number 1 safety, really, there was no argument for me to put him any higher if that's going to be your number 1 right now. I mean, allowed an 81.8% reception rate. He was the most targeted out of any safety in the AFC South last year. And he also allowed the highest passer rating of any safety in the AFC South last year. So putting all that together, we've seen the flashes from Julian Blackmon, and then with the depth that the Titans do not have, if Elijah Molden goes down, which is a surefire, is a better bet to happen than not.
It's a matter of when, not if.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And having Mike Brown or Shaheem Carter as your 3 and 4, it makes it tough for me to even think about putting them at the 3rd spot.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying the Titans and the Colts both have a clear 1. The Colts, Julian Blackmon, the Titans, Amani Hooker. You view Julian Blackmon as a better safety.
Yes.
Okay.
At least for last year.
I think it's really close, personally. I think that they are pretty. I put them on the same tier of a tiers list. And then so the reason why I went Tennessee over Indy, and again, it's splitting hairs. The ultimate point here is both groups are insufficient. The reason why is I see Blackmon and Hooker as kind of equivalent, and then I look at the 2s. And while Molden is an injury risk, if you told me we're getting 17 games out of Molden, even if it's 13 games out of Molden, you're getting most of a season out of him. I don't, from a skill set standpoint, I think he is like a good player. I don't think he's a injury riddled and bad player. If I thought that, then I'd say, don't even talk about him as a starter, move on, get him out off the roster. No, he's a good player. He just can't stay out there. When you look at the 2 in Indy, it's Rodney Thomas, the 2nd. And I think a lot of Titans fans are saying, who? Huh? Like Rodney Thomas, not a guy you usually talk a whole lot about. And so that was the tiebreaker for me is if you're getting the health button turned, if you're turning off injuries, Madden style, I much prefer the Titans 2 guys to the Colts 2 guys because of that number 2 guy. I don't really have a question here, and then we can kind of move on. Awaken to the Eternal.com asks, if rookie James Williams is not good enough to get a linebacker role in Tennessee, should he be moved back to safety just to keep him on the field talent-wise? So James Williams, a 7th round, right? He was the 7th guy, 7th round pick out of Miami, a safety in college, but has the frame, the build, the athletic traits to play linebacker. And the reason why the Titans picked him where they did, really just drafted him at all, and he went drafted and not, as a UDFA, was because of the fact that they view him as a linebacker. That is where they have been having him practice throughout the spring, like that. They are training him to transition to linebacker. It's a fair question because that's what he did in college, but I can answer pretty confidently, Awaken to the Eternal.com, that if they had any intention of playing him at safety, they wouldn't have drafted him. Like they wouldn't have spent the pick on that. That is not a plan of theirs. I think their plan is, we're going to get this guy to play linebacker. He is going to be depth. If things go amazing, he can be a starter for us one day. And if he's no good at linebacker, then he's no good for us. We're not interested in moving him to safety because he is a tweener build. He's not really built to be a safety at the NFL level. That's again the logic behind them moving him in the first place.
Yeah, I think I'm with you right there. You drafted him and explicitly said that he's going to play a different position than he played all throughout college, which should tell you pretty much that I think this front office doesn't believe that even if he was going to play safety, he wouldn't have the skill set to kind of keep up with that big, fast, and stronger receivers that are in the NFL compared to the college level.
Right. And exactly. I don't think it's a Titans thing, right? I think it is wherever he lands at the NFL level, James Williams' success will be as a linebacker, or he will not be an NFL player. I think that's the situation for him. So let's move to cornerback. We've talked a little bit about it. And the most important question here at the top is brought up by, I'm assuming, Braden from the 440 account. He asks, this is for you, JT, I'd imagine. Could Grimace play nickel, or is he a true outside corner? What are your thoughts?
If Grimace were to, well, of course, the Texas Rangers killed him last night, ruining his run. He was
murdered on national television. Can you believe that?
It was tough to watch for sure. However,
how many of our viewers have no clue what we're talking about right now? 97%, 98%?
Yeah, I think it's probably like Braden, D Goody, and like whoever else.
But I only know because of you.
Yeah. I think Grimace is a 3-tool player that can play any position on the field. Like, he's the most versatile, probably the GOAT, if I had to say.
Is he a true 5-tool player?
I think he really is. I think he is he can be anybody.
The tragic passing of Willie Mays earlier this week, a lot of talk about how he's the greatest 5-tool player to ever play. I think a modern Willie Mays might be Grimace.
I think Grimace could play any position in any sport, and just with the sheer aura that he has, could find success for sure.
Should we bother explaining the context of this at all, or should we just okay? Look up Grimace Mets if you are even remotely interested, but it's probably not even worth your time. So on the actual topic of cornerbacks, as we alluded to a lot with the safeties, it's kind of an inverse group, and so I'll share my list first. I have Tennessee 1. I think it's clear with a bullet. Tennessee has the best group of cornerbacks in this division. Then I have Houston at 2, Indianapolis 3rd, Jacksonville a clear and obvious 4th. I think there's some room for debating who the bottom of the list is. Like, I think, again, like cornerback, I think the top 2 and the bottom 2, very clear. There's a pretty significant divide. With the cornerbacks, same deal. I think Tennessee and Houston clearly have the best cornerback groups. Clear divide, and then Indy and Jacksonville both insufficient. And I came into this exercise, JT, expecting, like, I came in and there were some things I knew out of the gate. I went ahead on my list. I wrote Tennessee top of cornerbacks. I knew that was going to be the case. I went ahead and put Tennessee at the bottom of some other lists we'll get to later that I knew that was going to be the case. And I really expected to put, I thought, Indianapolis. They have the worst cornerbacks because the whole narrative this offseason is like, Indy building a good roster, not a whole lot of holes, except for the cornerback position. Like, what are they doing there? What's the plan there? Oh, surely they'll draft one on day 2, right? They go in, they draft actually day 1. A lot of mocks for like Terry and Arnold. Come on down to Indianapolis. If Indy could get their hands on the white savior of the quarterback position at Iowa, like, get that guy in there, he could fit in Indianapolis. I like that idea, and they just Latu. We'll take the edge rusher. Oh, okay. Well, day 2, surely no. Day 3, just don't care. They don't care about did they sign anybody in free agency? They also didn't do that. I don't know. Like, I don't know what their plan is. And yet, despite all of that, I got down to like looking at the actual roster, the depth chart, and I said, Jacksonville has a worse cornerback group than this Indianapolis group, which is astonishing because the Indianapolis group stinks. They are no good. They have no depth. Their top end talent is lacking. And yet, the Jacksonville Jaguars have somehow managed to be worse than them. Do you agree with that? Is this? I'm saying this like it's a given. I think it's a given. I'm going to give you a hard time if you disagree. Do you disagree?
I had our lists were chalk here because I
Okay.
agreed with
I
you.
think it's
and
really clear. I think it's super
I
obvious.
the clearest thing to me is that the divide between these two just herein lies in that the Texans and the Titans both have a bona fide stud lockdown number one corner. Whether
Mhm.
L'Jarius Sneed has proven it, and if you believe or not that Derek Stingley still needs to prove it, like
No, no,
that
no.
is
Let's put this out here right now. If you don't think Derek Stingley is a good cornerback, you have not been watching Derek Stingley. I think that's I'm going to draw that line in the sand right here. I think that is a little ball knower litmus test. If you're still like Jalen Petrie, if you're still like Derek Stingley, I don't know. You've not watched him. Go watch him last year, and you will change your mind.
Exactly. And I think that kind of sets the divide there where you have these two lockdown corners in as well, some pretty nice depth. And then I think with the other two, with the Jaguars, it's I have no idea what's going on there. I have no idea what they're trying to build. With the Colts, it feels like they just think Juju Brents and Kenny Moore are just going to be just fine for them. And
Two
like
pack and we're
that's
chilling.
it.
No, we don't need a backup plan. We don't need a
Don't
third
worry
guy.
about it.
We're just
That's what I think.
these two
At
have
least I
got it. We
know
have the ultimate faith in them.
at least with the Jaguars, I have no idea what's going on. The Colts are telling me, "Don't worry about it. It's fine." Like, like that.
Yeah, I
That's
understand sort of what the Colts are doing is that they have a lot of confidence in those guys. I vehemently disagree with it. And so that's why I say, hey, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand this, but I understand the folly of their thinking. With the, if I went to Broadway right now and just asked, interview on the street style, are you a Titans fan? Yes. Okay, you qualify for this survey. Who is the best cornerback on the Jacksonville Jaguars? Or perhaps I just ask, name me a starting cornerback on the Jacksonville Jaguars. If I asked 1,000 people, do you think there are more than 10 that give you a correct answer? Like, I don't think
and
people
even
know who these guys are.
With those 10, probably 5 of them say Trey Herndon, who is now who is a New York Giant. So
Right.
like they let like most of their good corners, and good is a relative term in this scenario
Starter
here.
capable guys.
Starter
right.
replacement level corners, they let walk in free agency. So I'm with you on the corner debate.
The answer to that question, by the way, is Ronald Darby. Like, that's the dude.
Yeah.
Ronald Darby, the face of the Jacksonville Jaguars cornerback groom, which when you see that, when you walk into the room, it should be telling immediately, oh, no. Uh-oh. Like, because it's Ronald Darby, and then it's Tyson Campbell, and it's Monteric Brown. Like, it gets ugly in a hurry. And I genuinely don't know what the plan is. They are, like, not even one deep at the position. I mean, Ronald Darby, if you put him on the Titans, he is no better than the fourth corner, maybe the fifth corner. If you put him on the Texans, he is no better than the third corner, maybe the fourth corner. I think that I don't know what their plan is at cornerback. I genuinely do not. I think that they're going to get cooked a lot this year, and you're going to, like, if you want Will Levis to really air it out, go ahead and circle the 2 Jacksonville Jaguars games. He's going to have the potential to do so.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Those are the 2 matchups definitely to watch. And then I think also you can also talk about the Colts matchups. It's like Kenny Moore and Juju Brents. Let's see these veterans, these guys who have been around for a long time.
I think that those are 2 good cornerbacks. Those
Juju
are 2
Brents,
starting caliber players.
Yeah, I think he surprised a lot of people last year in his ability to, he was called into action very quickly and was able to find some success. But still, I think it'll be very interesting to watch DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley go up against those 2 and that secondary as a whole.
But Kenny Moore, a good player still, despite being, he just recently turned, this year he turned 30. So he's getting up there, but he can still play. He's still got juice. I'm not worried about that. But he's a slot guy primarily at this point in his career, if I'm not mistaken, right? I'm not making that up.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what's the other outside corner? Like, Juju, clearly an outside cornerback for this team. I don't know what their other option is. I mean, I do know I did. Jalen Jones and Darrell Baker Jr. are the other 2 guys on this roster that are listed as starters. Okay, good luck with that. I don't know about that. And so if those 2 stay healthy, they will be okay at cornerback, but there will be one guy that is getting picked on each and every game for, like, obviously and for good reason. And if either of them get hurt at all, it can go downhill in a hurry for the Indianapolis secondary. And we're going to get to it. They've got a good pass rush, and so they may be very Tennessee Titans of of recent memory this year. The way that their pass rush is constantly betrayed by the secondary's inability to cover. Again, if either of those guys, if Julian Blackmon, Juju Brents, or Kenny Moore miss any time, it could get ugly quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So let's look at the top two guys here, the top two teams. Tennessee, what is there to say about the Tennessee Titans cornerback wise? The fans know you are 3 deep with 3 starters that would be starters on pretty much any team in the league. And L'Jarius Sneed, Chido Awuzie, Roger McCreary. Those guys, very good. If you just look at the starting 3 for each of these teams, it is not particularly close at all. Who has the best starting group? It is the Titans. And then depth wise, you could argue a little bit. Like you got an unknown and a rookie for the Titans as we're assuming as your 4th guy in Jarvis Brownlee Jr. And then it kind of drops off. It's Trey Avery, it's Eric Garrer, it's guys that you don't want to see the field. But let's say the Texans, for example, because they're the clear 2 for you and I. They've got Derek Stingley, who obviously a very good player. Titans legend Desmond King getting up there, but can still play in the nickel position. In the slot position, and then Steven Nelson, who is a serviceable player, has a lot of snaps under his belt. I think he may have led the Texans defense last year in total snaps. He played like almost 1,200 snaps last year, so it's done a lot of work for them, and is only 27, 28, 27. So he's not that old either. He's a solid piece, not super exciting, but solid. Their 4th guy is Miles Bryant, and I seriously doubt any Titans fans know who that guy is. Now, he got a lot of play last year. He played almost 900 snaps. But not a player that you're particularly worried about. I just think the Titans group is a clear step ahead of the Texans. And the Texans have a good group, but not a great group. That's how I perceive it.
Yeah, and then you have to also factor in a guy who we didn't really like in this draft class, Kamari Lassiter, who
I don't factor him in. That's the thing for me, and that's a preconceived notion. I don't see him as a factor in 2024 at all for them.
Kamari Lassiter, and then
you think he sees a lot of playing time? And I mean,
I think he sees.
He was a top 50 pick, right?
He was
something.
Yeah,
maybe he does.
I think he does.
Despite my better advice,
I think he sees the field a little bit, but once again, we weren't really high on him because of his athletic inefficiencies.
He's not fast enough. He cannot hang on the outside, and if that's where they play him, I don't think that they will. I do not. I will not insult the Texans' defensive brain trust, which I think is a very bright group, a defensive head coach who I have a lot of respect for. If he rolls him out there, they're either desperate or dumb. Because I don't. It's if Titans fans see Kamari Lassiter lined up wide against DeAndre Hopkins or Treylon Burks or actually any receiver on the Titans roster, any of the top guys, you should go ahead and stand up, get excited because good things are going to happen.
Yeah, and then, I mean, even if Kamari Lassiter does not play, the depth continues, I think, even after that. You look at a guy like a veteran in C.J. Henderson, who comes over from Carolina, as well as Jeff Okudah, the legend, the Lions' top 5
I totally
pick.
forgot he's on this team.
Jeff Okudah.
Wait, okay, hang on. That does change. That changes. I forgot. I knew Henderson. Okudah, how old is he? He's still really young, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's still
25 years old.
He's definitely below 30, but then that's like kind of the mystery box. And it's, the one meme from Arrested Development where Tobias is like, it hasn't worked for anybody else.
These people delude themselves into thinking it's going to work for them when it never has before.
For me. But it'll
work for us. Yeah,
exactly.
It's
That's
great.
kind of what the Jeff Okudah experiment now is in Houston. And you never know what they're going to get with that. So I think, you talk about all these players that the Texans have, they probably, to be honest, beat out the Titans in terms of depth-wise.
I agree. I was about to say that. I agree.
Starting caliber talent-wise, I think
close.
you still have to give the edge to Tennessee.
Yep, agreed. I if I'm looking at the entire division and just agnostically ranking the top cornerbacks, my top 5 guys just off the top of my head, it's Stingley, it is Sneed, it is Cheeto, it is McCreary, it is Kenny Moore. It is Juju. I think those are the 6 guys that come to mind as a clear top group, and the Titans have 3 of them, right? I really do think it's that. I think it's that clear. And don't worry, we're about to come way down on the Titans here when we get to the linebacker and the some of the up front situation. We're gonna come back down to earth. So it's not homerism to say this is the shining star of the Titans defense. I don't double check here. Yeah, I don't have the Titans as the best group at any of these 5 positions, not even close, besides cornerback. And I have them at or near the bottom in a handful of them. So, we agree on that. I think we can move on here to the linebacker position. By the way, if folks are with us live here today, we appreciate you guys being here. Join the conversation. Join awakentotheeternal.com, which is just one of the craziest names that is regularly in the chat. We appreciate you being here. And Braden watching along with us today. Join them in the comment section by going to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page, finding the live stream, and joining the comment section of that video. Hit like and subscribe while you're there as well. Do us a favor. The linebacker position, JT, I'll go ahead and share my list. The best group, obviously, is Tennessee Titans, and then it gets kind of murky from there. No, of course not. It's the opposite. The worst group, obviously, is the Tennessee Titans. They are dead last for me. I think the best group is Jacksonville. In this position group was the one that I sat and stared at the players in the depth chart and did the most research on, because I don't think this one is super clear to me. I think the only clear part of it is that Tennessee has the worst group. The longer I thought about it, the more I think Jacksonville is the clear one, and Indy and Houston are kind of interchangeable as 2-3. But I'm not saying the Jacksonville one part with my chest. I don't feel that confident about it. So if you disagree and think another team is number one, I'd be willing to hear your argument.
Yeah, I do have a different team as number one. I have the Indianapolis Colts just because.
So make the case.
They have the most going for them in terms of what they've drafted over the last couple of years. They have the young depth and talent to really mold into, I think, a really nice starting caliber group. Zaire Franklin, I think he's had an up and down couple seasons, but I think there's no doubting that he can still factor on that defensive kind of in the middle there. You look at a guy like EJ Speed, who I think continues to go underrated.
One of the most underrated defensive players in the division, I think. I think Speed is a very good player, and I don't think many people watched or noticed that last year.
And so when you look at that, and then you look at kind of some of the depth that they've had, you have a guy in Segun Alobi who kind of played a little bit and was a factor for them.
Did you just sneeze? Like that's, I think that's most people's reaction to that.
From San Francisco. And then, kind of the way that they put their room together, you're relying heavily on Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed this year, but I think
top heavy.
I think to say that the Indianapolis Colts are the number one linebacker group here is to continue to say that none of these groups are really that impressive still.
I was going to say, I think of the 5 position groups, tackle, edge, linebacker, cornerback, safety, collectively as a division, I think the linebacking core of this entire division is the weakest defensive group.
The middle linebackers, to say, definitely.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. That's what I mean. We're talking middle linebackers here when we're talking linebackers. So I have Indy 2. So I went Jacksonville 1, Indy 2, Houston 3, Tennessee 4. One of the interesting elements of this is when you look at the linebackers the Texans have, it's Christian Harris and Titans legend Azeez Al-Shaair. Azeez can play. Harris can play. They're the top 2 guys. I don't have a worry about them. When you get to the third guy, it's Vol for life, Henry To'oTo'o. I have a lot of concern about him. I did not like him at all coming out. They drafted him. I forgot where they drafted him, but wherever it was too high. I think it was like 4th round, 5th round.
I think it was the 5th round.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, why? Don't do that. That's a waste of a pick. I'm out on that. But their top 2 guys, Christian Harris, Azeez Al-Shaair, I like. The reason why I think this list, if you did it based on I would have here's what I'm trying to say, JT. I would have a different answer for you if you asked me to peer into the future and rank how I think these groups are going to perform in 2024. I would have Houston ranked higher than 3rd because of the respect that I have for their head coach to coach these guys up. I think a big part of the reason why Azeez Al-Shaair went to Houston was because he wanted to play for his old coach. And he, the best of him. The reason why the Titans signed him away from San Francisco in the first place was because of the work that he did under him. Right. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think that coaching element in Houston could lead their linebacking group to be better than 3rd, but based on the players alone, agnostic of the coach, agnostic of the situation, I have them 3rd. I have Indy 2 for the reasons you said. And then to finally get around to why I have Jacksonville 1st, it is admittedly a bit of a projection situation because their top 2 guys in Devin Lloyd and Foye Oluokun, not coming off of stellar years. Devin Lloyd in particular left a little bit to be desired last year, but I I liked him coming out. He's a young player. He's 25 years old. Foyer is nearing 29. He'll be turning 29 this season. So they're not too old. They're athletic enough, I think. Devin is a phenomenal run defender. If I had to pick any, of all of the AFC South linebackers, who is the best, like who has an elite trait? I go, okay, Devin Lloyd is a fantastic run defender. And then I have to sit and think long and hard, and I don't have a great answer for anybody else who has an elite trait. Like everybody else is pretty mediocre. I think Devin Lloyd is the one guy where you can say this guy does one thing really, really well. Now there's a trade-off there. His pass rush and his coverage grades, they leave something to be desired in that regard. But I think those two are strong. And, the last team that I have not mentioned is the Tennessee Titans for good reason. Jack Gibbons and Kenneth Murray is what it's looking like. Good luck, Charlie.
I was going to say it's the top three, at least in this division, have something going for them. Whether, like you said, it's Devin Lloyd and that elite trade, the veteran, the veteran play from a Zaire Franklin, plus the underrated pass rushing of an EJ Speed from last year.
I forgot to mention Chad Muma, by the way. Muma is the third guy for Jacksonville, who I liked him coming out. I don't know, how well he's translated to the NFL, but I do like him as a player, and he's young. So,
and then you have what you said in, the coaching of the Houston Texans defense, as well as Azeez Al-Shaair, who's one of the smarter linebackers in the league at his position.
Plays a ton of snaps. He's available. Yep.
With Houston, I do agree with you that they could be the highest risers out of all this. Like, if you tell me midway through the season that they are the best linebacking core, I probably would not be surprised by that. But
it's going to be in large part due to D'Amico, right? That's the reason why. D'Amico,
exactly.
I have a ton of respect for what he can do for defensive players.
I wouldn't be surprised about that one bit. But that's all to say, like, you can think of some really nice things that all three of those cores can do. Tennessee really
you get Tennessee, and there's no spin. You enter the spin zone with Tennessee linebackers, and you come out empty-handed. There is no spin.
You can talk about how Kenneth Murray can be a heat-seeking missile, and Jack Gibbons can maybe play catch up like that.
That's the spin, right? No, they are a great combination because you can get Kenneth Murray going north and south, and you can get. Well, actually, no, I lied. I was about to argue. So just kidding. The argument, and this is a bad argument. The argument is the inverse. You get Jack Gibbons going north and south. You get Kenneth Murray to figure out how to be good going east to west, which there's not a lot of track record there, but he's athletic, so maybe he's athletic enough to do it. Unlike Jack.
It's no east or west. It's just a tank. It's just a tank barrel, and the tank barrel just goes that way, and they just send all their linebackers.
That's fair. That's the argument. Is what if Titans linebackers never had to move side to side all year? What if they just went forward and backwards? In which case, the Titans have a pretty decent group. Jack Gibbons. Look at that guy trigger. Look at him go. Mike Vrabel talked a lot last year about how I love the way that guy triggers. Look at the way he gets off the line. If that's what you need them to do, then they can be good. But if you need them to go east and west at all, that's not good luck. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, let's move up front here and talk about the edge and the defensive line groups. Let's do edge first. And let me see let me make sure. So I think there's a clear one and a clear last place, and the middle two are interchangeable. I think Houston has easily the best group of edge players in this division. And I think Tennessee has easily the worst. So I had Houston 1, Jackson 2, Indianapolis 3, Tennessee 4. What about you?
Yeah, I believe I had almost the same. Yeah, I had Houston, Jacksonville, Indy, and Tennessee as well as the edge
same
group.
List.
I think you start with, how can Houston not be number one when they spent all of their money? Basically, they said, let's look at all of the edge rushers that are out there and let's get all of them.
Right.
Let's get all of them.
And that's what I was alluding to earlier with the resource allocation. I think it's interesting here the way that, we heard at the end of OTAs, Titans personnel, players, coaching staff talking about how Denard Wilson said pretty much explicitly, we are concerned about teams, the trend in the NFL, more interested in attacking the middle of the offensive line and how, you can win in the A and B gaps from a pass rush standpoint, and that works wonders for your edge defenders. And so you really need to beef up the middle of your offensive line to counter that trend. And yet the Texans are building like that's not a thing. Like they're just, we don't care, because we're going to get to the defensive tackle situation here. And spoiler, I think Houston has clearly the worst group of the division. It's a bunch of nobodies up front. But on the edge, Derek Barnett, Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, Jerry Hughes, Danico Autry. They're cooking, man. They're cooking. And I know Autry's an inside-outside guy, but they have him listed as an outside guy, and he's obviously going to be able to bring the best of both worlds. So he's their fourth or fifth best edge rusher, and he is, I think, they're probably their best interior player, which just speaks to how bad their interior is. But on the edge, they're 4 or 5 deep. And they've got youth in Will Anderson Jr., a guy that, they took a lot of criticism for moving up. And yet after just 1 year, he's the defensive player of the year. He's kind of proven them right. A risky gamble, a bold play, Cotton, but it did work out for them. He's a cornerstone type player you build around. The Danielle Hunter thing is funny because I'm blanking on his name. Who did they let go to Minnesota? And then they signed the Minnesota, an edge rusher who's slightly younger than Danielle Hunter, but slightly worse. I'm going to look this up. But they kind of traded one for the other. JT, help me out here because I can't talk and type at the same time. I'm very bad at multitasking.
Yeah, I forget who it is because I believe his name started with a J. Either way, you talk about
his name. Yeah, go. I'll find it.
The abilities that they have to use both. I think you say the inverse out the inside outside versatility of a Danico Autry is something that I don't think can be overstated. Like with him being able to play on both
Jonathan Grenard, that's who I was talking about.
Jonathan Grenard. Yeah. His ability to play on the inside and outside is going to be so impactful for them because it kind of creates sort of like what the Buffalo Bills did a couple of years ago when that pass rushing attack was so good. And I think that's something that they're going to try to use here to their advantage, taking a guy, within Danielle Hunter, who still has elite traits, but is a little bit older. Okay. Kind of mix him in there with the old guy like Danico Autry. And then guess what? You have a guy in Will Anderson who's going to be able to be young and spry every single time he's out there. Like being able to get that rotation is what makes them so dangerous and why I think they're number one.
I agree. And so when I got to 2 and 3, it became difficult for me because it's two very different situations. The Jaguars, I think, have the single best edge rusher in the division in Josh Allen. I think he is still underrated by other AFC South teams. I think Jacksonville Jaguars fans know what they have in Josh Allen, and they paid him accordingly. The team did. But he's kind of known as the other Josh Allen in the league, and that's kind of a bit, and that's funny. But he's the only dude on that team because their next best edge rusher is Trayvon Walker, who, number 1 overall pick, don't get me wrong, but what he has done so far in the NFL has been really underwhelming, and it's slowly been trending in the right direction. So I'm not saying he's a nothing, but it's a projection still at this point to really project him as a great compliment to Josh Allen. He's not been that yet. And so they have the best guy, but then really no depth behind him. Whereas the Colts, Samson Ebukam, Kwity Paye, and Taekwon Lewis, and Dio Odengbo, it's a nice 4-pack of guys, all dudes that you want in that hockey rotation style rotation. And yet there's not a true one. And so I wrestled with the idea of, would I rather have a true one and kind of figure it out beyond that? Or would I rather have a group that I can rotate 4 guys that I think are all good rotationally, but I wouldn't want any of them to be the true starter all the time and be the alpha. I went with the team that has the true one and has a game record type in Josh Allen. So that's why I have Jacksonville 2 and Indy 3. But they are different. And I would understand if somebody ranked them differently for that reason.
And I think that's a big thing because we both are big fans of Kwity Paye, and people might think that
I like Kwity Paye a lot.
I think we might now be pro Indianapolis Colts because apparently we don't think Harold Landry and Arden Key can get it done here, putting them fourth. And I think it's an interesting discussion between why we think Josh Allen is the star power, but the zero depth, and then all the depth and then zero star power. What makes this Titans kind of pass rushing attack not different, but also not better than the other 2 alternatives? And I think it's just the production has been lackluster the past couple of years.
Well, the reason why the Colts have a better group than the Titans right now is because they have the depth there. And while I think highly of Harold Landry. I think he's I think he's on the lower end of true ones in terms of edge rushers in the league. He is like, I see him like I see Michael Pittman as a receiver, where it's like, yeah, they're a one, they can do the one thing, but if you put all the ones together from the entire league, they'd be near the bottom of the list of ones. So it's a one, it's good, it's a dude, but it's on the lower end. It's a poor man's edge one. They don't, beyond that, it's, Arden Key, don't get me wrong. I love Arden as a person, and he's fun to watch play, but I think he's best in a rotational role. But they're not going to be afforded that opportunity this year because they don't, he's going to have to be out there. They don't have another dude unless you want Rashad Weaver to be the starter. And I promise you don't want that to be the case. And so I prefer Indy for that reason. They've got the depth. And I prefer Jacksonville simply because while I like Harold Landry, I don't think he holds a candle to Josh Allen. I don't think it's close in terms of edge rush prowess. I think Josh Allen is clearly a better player pretty much in every way possible than Harold Landry. And that is not a knock to Landry. That's just, Josh Allen is a true elite tier pass rusher in the NFL to me. He's a top, borderline top 10 guy in that regard. Harold Landry is a top 20 guy. It's just different worlds in that way. So, that's the reason why I think it's Houston, Jacksonville, Indy, Tennessee.
Yeah, I think a lot what you said I resonate with on that one as well.
And so it's going to be interesting to compare and contrast as we move to the defensive tackle situation, because I think Houston is very similar with their tackle edge build to the way that Jacksonville has gone about their secondary with cornerback and safety, right? Jacksonville, awesome safety group, really bad cornerback group. Texans, awesome edge group, really bad interior defender group. I think they are the clear four. I have them ranked. I think Indy is clearly the best on the interior. So I think it's Indy. Then Tennessee 2, Jacksonville 3. But I think there's an argument to be made that Tennessee and Jacksonville can be flipped. It just depends. There's projection there, and we'll get to that in a minute. And then Houston dead last. What was your list looking like?
Yeah, so I only flipped 2 here. I had Indianapolis first, Tennessee second. I had Houston 3 because I really do think, mostly because, and the reason is I think Danico Autry may find himself playing a lot more on the inside for them than the outside.
Fair.
And
That's
with
fair.
that in mind, I know we just talked about how bad.
I'm not sure that changes my opinion, though. Like, genuinely, really? I don't. In
Jacksonville 4, it was so tough for me, but just knowing the player and the reliability of what Danico Autry can be on that interior of the line and as a force multiplier with the guys around him, I think we could see another productive year from the 34-year-old on the interior of the line, as well as mixing in on that outside.
So starting at the top, the reason why I think Indy is the clear one, the clear best defensive line group in the AFC South is because if I'm bucketing the entire division, just individual players in the division at the the interior defender position, the top tier is only 4 guys. And there's a clear divide between the top 4 guys and the rest of the division. And those top 4 are DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, the newest Jacksonville Jaguar, Grover Stewart, Jeffrey Simmons. I think the next tier of guys drops off pretty precipitously because it's like Mario Edwards, Titans legend, Khalil Davis, Fola Fatukasi, Sebastian Joseph Day, Raekwon Davis, Tim Settle. Those guys don't hold a candle to these top 4 guys, and Buckner, Armstead, Stewart, Simmons. And 2 of them are Colts. Like I think Buckner Stewart is fantastic. Now, if you're a Titans fan, you're saying, well, a year from now we could be saying, wow, the Jeffrey Simmons Devondre Sweat duo is the best 1-2 punch. Perhaps, yes, but there is so much uncertainty there. That is why I think Tennessee is 2, and why I would hear an argument for Tennessee being the 3rd group, just because, technically speaking, as of this moment, the Titans have Simmons and then a bunch of really, really unknown. We are very high on Devondre, and that's why I'm willing to put them 2. But that's because we're high on Devondre.
Yeah, and I think I'm there as well. I flirted with the idea of even putting them 1, but that was just way too much projection, especially considering our huge,
would have been a great radio take. Would have been awesome for radio.
It would have been nice.
Yeah,
exactly. But considering the huge projections that the projection debate that we had on the offensive side, I decided this time to just look at what they have for right now, and we just simply don't know what they have. However, I still have Tennessee 2 because I think, like yours, Jeffrey Simmons is not only in that top tier, I think he is number 1 in that tier. I think when he is fully healthy, I think he can be the best interior defensive lineman in the AFC South. And just because of that star power, I think Tennessee, no matter what the depth is behind them, they do have some nice role players in Sebastian Joseph Day. They do have him as well. I think given that star power that Jeffrey Simmons has, and we've seen before, like he has been able to carry the interior defensive part of the line even on like a bum ankle. Like they were shooting him up every single week and he was still able to get out there and be a factor. And so for that, I think you just can't put him below 2 right now. And then of course,
by the way, no love for Keandre Coburn or Marlon Davidson
I
or
was going
Quentin
to
Bohanna.
I was
No love for
maybe
those
going to
guys?
say something about Keandre Coburn, but I once again do not know if he's even going to make
Well,
the
the most
roster.
notable thing about Keandre Coburn is what?
He got drafted by the Chiefs and then picked up off the practice squad.
Right, he's a former practice squad guy. Like that's
teammate. Like that's.
I was going to say that's what it is.
I mean,
That's what it is. It's the
and again, like
the guy that
he
played
was
with
he
Devontae Sweat at one
enough
point.
for us to know about him in the draft, and I think that counts for something. It's not like it was just
Sure.
any kind of
Competitive.
practice squad type of guy, but still, like Jeffrey Simmons is a star in the league on one of the kind of most underrated positions on the defense. And with that being said, I think that gives him enough to be 2. Now, let's talk about that projection with T'Vondre Sweat. If T'Vondre Sweat proves to be just at least T'Vondre Sweat, if not more than what he can be right now at this moment, with the kind of the weight and managing that and all the outside factors combined, like if he can break through that and continue to be the T'Vondre Sweat that was right next to Byron Murphy, I think we're having a real discussion come middle of the season where this interior defensive line group is number 1.
I think it's a possibility, but there's a long road for Sweat Simmons to unseat Buckner Stewart in my mind. So I think that we've elaborated on that sufficiently. The last thing we've really talked about here are the bottom 2 teams in Jacksonville and Houston. Jacksonville adding Eric Armstead, very nice addition, older player, but he's got juice. He's still got the ability to play. And then it's Roy Robertson Harris, Adam Gotsis, Jeremiah Ledbetter, 3 guys that I doubt many Titans fans would be able to tell you what team they play for. Like it's a really tough group on the inside. And then the Titans legend Mario Edwards Jr., who's up there in age and a rotational player at best right now, but like you mentioned, it's pretty much why am I blanking on his name? We were just talking about him. Danico Autry or bust for them on the interior up front, because it is Mario Edwards and Khalil Davis and Folo Fodakasi and Tim Settle, Bills legend Tim Settle, Kurt Hinish. I've never even heard of this fellow. It's a tough group for them. And so it's interesting to me the way the Texans are all in on the edge position. The Titans seem to be pretty between defensive tackle and edge. They're much more interested in dominating the interior. I wonder how much of that is the Titans trying to get with the times and be like ahead of the curve, the modern NFL, projecting these trends, seeing the way that people are moving towards beefing up their interior defensively, winning in the A and B gaps, that philosophy that we heard from the Titans coaching staff just a couple weeks ago. I don't know whether or not that's going to come to fruition, but if it does, then the Titans will look very smart for it, and the Texans may be stuck in the past a little bit.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It really is just kind of the flip flopping. It's one experiment where they're going to rely on Danico Autry to get through the middle, and some of these other guys because of the star power and the attention that is required on the outside. Whereas with the Titans, it's going to be the opposite, right? T'Vondre Sweat and Jeff Simmons are going to demand the amount of the most amount of attention there, so that players like Harold Landry and Arden Key, some guys who may not be the most dominant at their position, have a little bit more time.
Glory Day Sports in the chat asking, can we get some TK McClendon love? No, we cannot, I'm afraid. I checked the cupboard. We are all out of TK McClendon love. Just some that's all that's left. I like TK McClendon as a 4th defense. Like, I don't want him to see the field much. So yeah. That's it for us today. I think we're done. That's the defense, and we have now ranked every position group. We didn't do special teams. Who's got the best special teams unit? I think the Titans clear with Stoney and Granddaddy Stronglegs. I think it's a wrap. I think those. Oh, and excuse me, perennial Pro Bowl long snapper. Titans kind of had the special teams units locked. I don't know.
Well, I mean, let's look at this real quick.
Refresh our memory on the other teams.
Right now, what you have is you have Kaimi Fairbairn, who kind of won them a couple games last year with the Texans.
Good
He's
player,
fine.
good player.
The legend of Matt Gay, who got a 4-year, $24 million contract from the Colts and still missed a heck of a lot of kicks last year.
Wild decision by them last season. Yeah.
Newest rookie for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Cam Little, is currently their starting kicker in a battle with Riley Patterson. And then Nick Folk, the legend. In that battle, I think Nick Folk takes it. I think also Ryan Stonehouse.
Fairbairn. I think it's Fairbairn Folk as the 1-2, and Fairbairn's younger, so I'd be willing to say Fairbairn is better, but I don't think anybody's punter holds a candle to.
All right, this is an interesting one. This is what we'll end on, though. Okay, rank these 4 kick returners currently for the AFC South.
There you go.
The Texans currently have listed Dameon Pierce as their kick returner.
They're number 1, obviously.
Josh Downs is listed as the Colts, but I think it ends up being their 5th-round rookie, Anthony Gould, as their kick returner.
Good point. But I just realized, Downs and these are dudes these are all my guys from the past, so this is tough. Okay.
The Jacksonville Jaguars have Devin Duvernay. They also have Dearness Johnson, Parker Washington, Austin Trammell.
Nope.
And then
there's
finally,
no answer there.
The Titans may be rolling out something like Kyrus Jackson, Jaquan Jackson, Tyjae Spears, Treylon Burks. How would you rank those 4?
Yeah, the Titans have a lot of room. Titans' biggest unknown for sure. I think Jacksonville clear last place there. I will go Texans, Colts, Titans, Jaguars. Ranking those
Texans because of David. You're putting Dameon Pierce over Josh Downs.
Bet your ass I am.
Gould?
Yep,
wow,
yep.
That's crazy.
Gould, big unknown. And as you say, I don't think it's going to be Downs. So I think it's Gould, and we don't know with Gould. So I think it's Texans are the best return man situation. So go Texans. Going to win 14 games this year. All right. That's going to be it for us today on the Hot Read Podcast. If you tuned in live with us, we appreciate you being here. We'll be back twice next week. The topics of those episodes, follow us on social media at Hot Read Pod. We'll figure it out. Probably a guest in there, maybe 2 guests. It's going to be a good time. I'll be on vacation. I'll be recording from Maine. I've never been to Maine. Going to Maine for a week with my wife's family. And many people are asking, what does one do in Maine? What is there to do?
Eat lobster.
Right. Eat good food. Find sea glass on the beach. Go to Acadia National Park. It's going to be an outdoorsy time. We're going to have a good weather in the summer. I think it's going to be a hair chillier up there. Maybe a little bit better hanging out in the 70s than here in Nashville, where we are under the devil's thumb himself. We appreciate you guys being here. We'll be back on Tuesday next week. Until then, have a fantastic weekend. Beat the heat. Have a cold drink and enjoy and kick your feet up and have a good time. We'll talk to you then. For producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. It's been the Hot Read Podcast.